Diabetes is there. It's in the back burner. It's humming, but it's not taking over your entire existence. And that's the big distinction I want to make here, because again, you could have an A1C of 5.4. I've even heard of people with A1Cs in the fours who have type 1 diabetes, but their entire goal in life is to have an A1C in the fours, which you have to consider quality of life at the same time. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to live my life and my blood sugars are perfect, but I'm not doing anything except, man, there's no point then. What's the point? There isn't. Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Zeal. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. And I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode. What is going on? Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast. And today we're going to have some fun because we're going to talk about what it actually takes to consistently have an average blood sugar in the 120s. And I would argue to an extent, that's the holy grail of diabetes. That's the, hey, mama, I've made it. This is the situation where my numbers are great. And not only are they great today and they're great tomorrow, but they're great for the next few months, the next few years, because it's repeatable. Because I always tell people, I'm like, hey, it's one thing to have your A1C at 6.2. It's another thing to have your A1C at 6.2 and keep it at 6.2. Substitute 6.2 with 5.8, 5.7, 6.0, whatever you want, right? Relatively solid control. And again, my disclaimer before I go into this is you could look at an average and say, oh, well, you know, you could have a 40 blood sugar and you could have a 240 and that averages out to 140. Yes, of course, you could look at it that way. The same way that people could say, oh, my A1C is 5.8, but I spend 20% of my time low. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to pair a great average blood sugar with a high time in range. You tell me you're 85%, 90% time in range, your average blood sugar is, let's say 126, you are going to be in a great spot to maintain that, as long as you're not living life hyper restricted, because then it's not going to be sustainable. You might be able to do it for a few months or a few years, but at some point you'll inevitably fall off the path. We're talking about here, you're living life, you're eating the foods you love, you're doing the activities you want with the people you want, when you want to. Diabetes is there. It's in the back burner. It's humming, but it's not taking over your entire existence. And that's the big distinction I want to make here, because again, you could have an A1C of 5.4. I've even heard of people with A1Cs in the fours who have type 1 diabetes, but their entire goal in life is to have an A1C in the fours, which you have to consider quality of life at the same time. You have to consider quality of life at the same time. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to live my life and my blood sugars are perfect, but I'm not doing anything except, man, there's no point then. What's the point? There isn't. So what it truly takes to have an A1C, that's great, but more so, what does it take to average the 120s? And gratefully, we've had our share of patients that have started out in one point. You know, maybe they're like you, right? Maybe they started out at 170 average, 160 average, 180 average, 200, or hey, maybe they started at 147, but they bounced all the time. So they were constantly having a dinner out at a restaurant and their blood sugar goes up to 275, and then they have lows later on and it averages out and they end up okay in the eyes of their care team. Their A1C is 6.8, 6.9. They're doing fine. Their doctor's not concerned, but they know that there's room to improve and they want to feel better. And so that may be your situation here. And if that is, you are in for a treat, because I want to go through the patients that we have and what characteristics they have in common that help them achieve consistent average blood sugars in the 120s. And these patients, I will also say, all of their A1Cs are in the high fives, mid fives, and at worst, and I use worst loosely here, 6.0, 6.1. And so it's not a coincidence that they all have these things in common. So I'm going to go through a few of them with you. You know, feel free to take notes, feel free to think about these things, but understand that there are elements of this that are common from every single solitary person. Element number one, first thing I will say, and you may not like me for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway, calculating out all of the nutrients at a meal before dosing and then dosing. And so what do I mean by that? So let's say you sit down for dinner, you're at home, you made yourself some, some veggies, you made yourself some chicken, you made yourself some pasta, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? Fill in what you want. But you sat down and you said, hey, I measured how much I'm having. This is how many carbs. This is how much fat. This is how much protein. This is how many carbs. This is how much fat. This is how much protein. Here's what my dose needs to be. Dosing on time. Done. That is step number one with all of the people that have achieved this. And notice what I've said here. measured it out, weighed it out, did what they had to do to figure out that portion size, and then made sure they paid attention. And this could also go for, hey, they're going to go to some crazy restaurant, have a giant burrito, same type of thing. They're not weighing out the burrito in the restaurant, but they're saying, hey, let me break this down. And then I not only know my carbs, but I know my fat and protein. I know what to do from a dosing standpoint. I'm going to dose on time up front. That has to be a part of the game if you want a blood sugar average in the 120s. Because again, think about it. You're otherwise playing roulette. Being honest, like I say this all from a place of love, but you're effectively playing roulette. Oh, this looks like it's 47 grams. I'll just dose for that. Yeah, there's a chance that you're correct. There's a chance that you're correct. There's also a chance that you're absolutely not correct. There's a chance that you're way off, right? It's just like anything else. A broken clock is correct twice per day, right? You could say, oh, well, I dosed 47 last time and it worked out great. Right. Maybe you accidentally did do 47 grams of carbs and you just didn't know. But to me, it's about how can it be a repeatable process? How can you get to that 120 something average? And how can you make it a repeatable process that's predictable? And of course, there's going to be weird things, right? Maybe your psych goes bad. Maybe the insulin's not going great. Maybe there's a hidden ingredient you didn't know about. It happens to us all. But more often than not, you're going to end up in a higher likelihood and a higher probability of success because you're doing this first initial step. And notice I didn't just say, oh, the carbs, and then we're done. Maybe the fat and protein aren't a factor, but at least they've eliminated that as a potential factor. And if they didn't, they're like, okay, I know in a few hours, I'm going to go pay attention to these. That is your key right here. That is one of the biggest, if not the most important thing that all of these patients have in common is they are all doing that with meals. And it might sound, oh, this is this big, long, drawn out process. It's really not a drawn out process. And I tell you that as someone who does this myself, right? I don't care if I'm in a restaurant. I don't care if I'm at home. It doesn't matter. I'm treating every meal the same way. And that would be number 2 is you're treating every meal the same. You could be eating a snack at 4 p.m. in a candy shop. You could be eating dinner at a Michelin place. I've never been to one, but you get the idea. You could be going through a drive-through at 1 p.m. having a late lunch. It doesn't matter. You're approaching every single thing the same. You're still figuring out exactly what I just went through before. Carbs, protein, fat. What's my dose? Is there a dose later? What do I have to do? That is going to save you a ton of effort and pay off massively in spades. Absolutely going to be massive for you. You have to consider doing that. Like you do not have a choice in this case if you want to have an average there. If you don't, if you're like, yeah, you know what, it's fine. Then you're going to get out the effort you're putting in. And ultimately, I'm not saying this to be, a mean person. I'm saying this to be honest. But number 3, really number 2, but we can say number 3 in this situation. What is the next piece of the puzzle? Physical activity is consistent. And it doesn't matter what kind it is. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of 3 different people. One of them likes to lift weights. One of them likes to go on runs. One of them likes to go to dance classes, like swing dancing, ballroom dancing. You get the idea, all that stuff. Notice it doesn't necessarily matter. Should there be some combination of cardio and strength? Absolutely, yes. But they are consistent at doing some kind of activity. They're all good about getting their steps in and walking. But when it comes to exercise as a whole, they are doing something to boost their insulin sensitivity nearly every day. Doesn't have to be every single solitary day. One of them might work out. They might train 4 days a week. The other days, they're definitely moving their body. One of them trains almost every single day. I think 1 day off per week in total. One of them that does the dance classes, right? They go 3 times a week to that. They may occasionally hit some weights at home, but notice it doesn't matter. They're all different kinds of people. They're all different ages. They're all different, all over the place. It's just the key is there's consistent physical activity. You have to be doing something. And ideally, of course, with that, right, you've got your prep. You know what to do to make sure you're not going to tank. You know what to do to make sure your blood sugar doesn't spike from adrenaline or from, oh, I'm lifting really heavy and my number's going to rise. You know what to do ahead of time, so you're not going to have to worry about that. But it's imperative as a person with diabetes to be able to say, hey, I've got my food nailed. I've got my activity consistent. And again, it doesn't have to be rocket science. It really does not have to be rocket science at all. It's something just as simple as, what do you like doing that's physically active? If you like going for walks, go for a walk. If you like doing weights, do weights. Should you do some combination? Probably, it's ideal. But if you don't, pick something. It's going to benefit you over nothing. And I know I've told what I'm about to tell. I've told this in the past, but vividly remember, different patient, not in this group, but that part's not as relevant, did everything the same for 2 weeks in a row. This was not meant to be an experiment. It just kind of worked out like this. So the first week they're, normal life. Oh, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to work out. It's going to be great. They did, I think 4 days in the gym. They were fine. Their blood sugar average, we'll just put easy numbers just for illustration purposes. You'll get the idea here. 140. The next week, they didn't do anything. They were just like, I'm going to hang out. I don't have time for this. I got stuff going on. It's crazy. Did not move their body at all. Average blood sugar, 160. Nothing else was different. Same food, same job, same everything else. But 1 week moved their body, 1 week did not. And I'm not over here saying, oh my God, this is all science. It's an N of 1. It's a small sample size. But what I will tell you is that little teeny tidbit of info should be enough for you to be like, oh, I need to move my body a little bit. Because 20 points when it comes to A1C, when it comes to average, if we look at A1C, right, 20 points, you're looking at almost at least 0.75%. That's a lot. I mean, that's the difference of going from 7.5 to 6.8, 6.7. That's a big difference. That's a big difference. And that's just from moving your body. Everything else was the same. And again, this was not meant to be some sort of experiment or scientific thing. It just happened to work out that way. And like I said, it was an N of 1. It was one person, but it's pretty common in most people. You don't move for a few days. You're in a car ride, you're on an airplane, whatever. Your numbers are going to likely start to creep up. And so you have to adjust. But outside of that's a separate conversation. The people who average in the 120s tend to have that in common. So to recap so far, right? They're figuring out the meals, not just the carbs, but the protein and the fat and the portion size before they do anything, dosing on time, meds on time. Second thing, consistent on the physical activity. Third thing, and again, sound crazy here, but hear me out. The protein intake is on point. Protein has been shown to stabilize blood sugars time and time again. And you don't have to be, I'm optimally having my exact number of protein grams at yes, of course. Could you do that? Sure. But at the end of the day, these people are hitting their protein target that their body needs to optimally run, which is only going to help body composition, only going to help with stability in blood sugars. And likely they're going to feel better because protein is not going to be as likely to send the blood sugar to the moon unless they're not careful or it's protein powder. So that's another huge piece of the puzzle when it comes to averaging in the 120s. Number 4, this next one is also a big deal. When things don't go well, blood sugars go way out of range. They don't freak out and get very reactive. And again, maybe I sound crazy. Maybe you're like, man, how could you possibly say? Because here's the thing. Let's just pretend your sight was bad. You didn't know it was bad and you ate a meal and your blood sugar shot to the moon. Well, now you're 260. You feel like garbage. You're not used to running at 260. If you choose to freak out, all you're doing is making it more difficult for your body to lower that blood sugar again. Because your body's not going to do it on its own, right? It's likely going to be a combination of maybe it's insulin, maybe it's a different medication, maybe you're walking, maybe you're drinking water. Water is always a good idea. But maybe it's one of those things. But the key with this is, in a nutshell, you are going to be freaking your body out, freaking your mind out. Your mind and your body are connected, and your brain's gonna be like, oh my God, fight or flight. There goes your cortisol. Now you're gonna have a higher blood sugar for longer. I've even seen it where people's blood sugars continue to go up when they notice that they're high. So they don't even know that they're high. They're, I'm 235. They're like, oh my God, I'm 235. This is so scary, because your mind and your body are connected. I also remember, in the similar token, but it's not quite the same. There was a time I was a kid. I don't remember what my blood sugar was, but I remember being a kid and I was testing. It was, I don't know, it was probably like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. I was going to bed or I was already in bed. And I tested and I thought I might have been low. And it turned out I was low, but I wasn't symptomatic. I wasn't that low. I was like in the 60s. But then suddenly I saw the number and then my brain was like, oh snap, here we go. That's how I envision it with people seeing their blood sugar. Oh my God, this is so scary. Oh my goodness. Oh my God. You don't want to freak yourself out because all it's going to do is make your life that much more difficult. When your life's that much more difficult, again, you're just making it harder to feel good again. And what's the point of that? There's no point. There's zero utility in that. So that is something I want to make sure it's very apparent, because again, instead of freaking out, okay, how can I acknowledge, respond, and move on? How can I master that? Number sucks. What am I going to do about it? Cool. I did something, move on to the next thing in life. Because sitting there and dwelling ain't going to do anything. I can tell you that already, 100% certainty. And the big one here, next one, number 5. I promise I'll keep the list just at 5. Number 5 is they have outside eyes checking on their number on a regular basis. And what does that mean? That could mean me, a dietitian on my team. Somebody is on a regular basis, typically every other week, sometimes more frequently than that, checking out their blood sugars and making sure that if there's patterns, hey, what types of patterns are emerging? What could be happening at this time of day that might need to be adjusted? Maybe we're considering shifting when breakfast is. Maybe we're considering, hey, let's add in some protein here. Let's consider what we're doing before you start working out or after you're done working out, or you're about to have a crazy day of travel. Let's figure out what we're going to do. The point is having somebody outside of you who is removed from the situation, looking at your blood sugars is a massive deal on a regular basis. Because again, first off, it's your blood sugars. You are likely too close to the problem. And I'm going to use that in air quotes. You're too close to them to really be able to identify things. And you can be objective and you can be like, that dinner, I just, X, Y, and there might be a reason for it, right? Oh, I just didn't, count my carbs right, whatever. Right. But it's a lot easier to do that when it's just you. And then you're like, okay, cool. And suddenly the pattern becomes a legitimate thing. In the case of someone else looking at, let's say I'm looking at your numbers. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm noticing this trend over here. We're digging in. We're figuring out what's up. We're figuring out a way to solve it. And we're saying, here's your new action item. Start doing this. And then in a couple of weeks or, a couple of days or whatever the time frame is, right? Report back and we'll see how things are going. And then we go from there. So that's the difference is every one of these people that we've seen through our practice, they have come consistently to us for a certain amount of time. And it could be, hey, they're seeing us every other week for, 45 minutes. We're popping through numbers, we're popping through food, making sure everything's optimal and keeping them where they want to be. Or it could be, hey, at one point they showed up and their blood sugars were up and down like a bouncy ball. And they're like, I don't know what's going on. We're going through that more often. And we're saying, okay, cool. Let's figure this out. Let's dig in the trenches with you. Have someone having your back that's going to look at your stuff and say, hey, this is what needs to happen so you feel better. It's that straightforward. It's that simple. You have to have the outside set of eyes. It doesn't matter. If you want it to be our team, we would be honored to serve you. We're all dietitians. We all have it. We all get it. We understand you and what you're going through and are able to help. And we all have exercise backgrounds. But on the flip side, if it's somebody else, we're like, hey, I've got my care team. As long as someone's consistently helping you in the trenches, that's all I care about, is that you're going to feel better at the end of the day. We're obviously here as another option. We like to think we're very good at what we do, as evidenced by the results we get for people. But at the same time, you got to have someone with outside eyes taking a look at what you're doing on a regular basis. So those are the 5 commonalities of people that have A1Cs that are great, but also people that average in the 120s. So let me know which one of those things was the biggest mind-blowing type of thing. A lot of it's not going to seem crazy. It's going to be like, oh, this is foundational stuff. But the key is, can you actually do it and can you stick to it? So let me know which of those are the most impactful to you and what you're going to start changing in your life with diabetes as a result. And of course, if you're loving the pod, definitely drop us a great review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening. And if you have got questions, you've got comments, you're like, hey, I want to really just level up my blood sugars, feel better. I'll drop some links in the show notes, as well as you can always reach out to me on social media at manofzeel, MANOFTZEEL on TikTok, Instagram, wherever you'd like. With that, I appreciate you, sending you good vibes to better blood sugars, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.